Welcome to Empires of Antiquity, Warlords of the Ancient World, Season 1, Episode 1, Attila the Hun. We're thrilled to have you join us on this journey into the lives of history's most ruthless and legendary warlords. In this inaugural season, we'll delve deep into the minds and legacies of fearsome leaders whose cunning, power, and relentless ambition shaped the ancient world. From the windswept steppes of Central Asia to the fortified cities of Europe, we'll bring their stories to life, exploring the strategies, battles, and decisions that forged empires and changed the course of history. Our journey begins with the tale of Attila the Hun, a name that has echoed through the ages as a symbol of terror and awe. Attila, the Scourge of God, commanded vast armies and carved out an empire through sheer force of will. His ruthless tactics and unyielding drive to conquer left an indelible mark on both the Roman Empire and the annals of history. Prepare to step into the world of a warlord whose legend still looms large even after centuries. History remembers many great conquerors, men who carved their names into the bones of empires, but among them, one name stands out, shrouded in darkness and legend. He was a man feared by the greatest powers of his time, a force of nature who seemed destined to bring the world to its knees. The Romans called him Flagellum Dei, the Scourge of God. His name was Attila, and his shadow would stretch across continents, leaving a legacy of terror, destruction, and awe that would endure for millennia. But who was this man who defied the might of Rome, who united the fierce tribes of the steppes into an unstoppable horde, and who even in death would shape the future of Europe? This is the story of Attila the Hun, a man born in the savage wilderness, molded by the fires of war, and destined to become one of history's most feared and enigmatic figures. To understand Attila is to journey into the heart of darkness, to confront the fine line between civilization and chaos. In the turbulent landscape of the ancient world, where empires rose and fell like the tides, one figure emerged who would forever be etched in the annals of history, a man whose name evoked terror and awe, a figure whose conquests reshaped the course of nations. This is the story of Attila the Hun, the Scourge of God, a leader whose very name struck fear into the hearts of all who heard it. And Attila was born into the vast, untamed expanses of the Eurasian steppes in the early 5th century, a land that was as harsh as it was beautiful. These steppes, stretching from the edges of Europe to the borders of China, were home to a fierce and nomadic people known as the Huns. For centuries, the Huns had roamed these lands, masters of the horse and the bow, living lives of constant movement, hunting and warfare. The Huns were a confederation of nomadic tribes, united by their shared heritage and way of life. Their origins lay in the far reaches of Central Asia, likely emerging from the region around modern-day Mongolia. Over generations, they migrated westward, drawn by the rich lands and plunder of the settled civilizations on the borders of the Roman Empire. By the time of Attila's birth, the Huns had become a formidable force, feared and respected by the great powers of Europe and Asia alike. Attila's early life was shaped by the unforgiving realities of the steppes and by the influence of his father, Mundzuk, a respected chieftain among the Huns. Mundzuk was a man of great power and even greater ambition, and he saw in his son the potential to surpass all who had come before. From a young age, Attila was taught the ways of war, leadership and survival, but it was more than just skill with a sword or bow that Mundzuk instilled in his son. It was a vision of what the Huns could become under the right leader. Mundzuk believed that the future of the Huns lay not just in raiding and plunder, but in conquest and empire. He would often speak to Attila of the great civilizations beyond the steppes, the wealth of Rome, the strength of the Eastern Empire, and the fertile lands ripe for the taking. To be a true leader, Mundzuk would say, is to see beyond what is and to strive for what could be. This vision of a united Hunnic empire, stretching across continents, took root in Attila's mind, shaping his ambitions and driving him to greatness. Under Munzuk's guidance, Attila learned not only the skills of a warrior, but the wisdom of a ruler. He was taught to be ruthless yet calculating, to strike fear into his enemies, but also to unite his people with a shared purpose. Munzuk's lessons were not just about survival. They were about domination, about forging a legacy that would echo through the ages. Attila absorbed these lessons with a fervor, growing into a leader who would carry his father's vision to its fullest realization. Attila's education extended beyond the martial. Munzuk ensured that his son learned from the finest minds within the Hun Confederation. Attila spent time with tribal elders who imparted the wisdom of their ancestors and with warriors who taught him the art of command. But Munzuk also exposed Attila to the world beyond the steppes. He sent envoys to the courts of the Romans and Goths, and as a young man Attila would meet Roman emissaries and hear tales of distant lands and vast empires. These experiences expanded Attila's horizons and deepened his understanding of the world he was destined to conquer. As Attila matured, he began to take on more significant responsibilities. By his late teens, he was leading his own war bands, carrying out raids and skirmishes against neighboring tribes and Roman outposts. Munzuk remained a guiding presence, often watching from a distance, allowing Attila to make his own decisions while providing counsel when needed. These early campaigns honed Attila's skills in leadership, tactics, and the psychological aspects of warfare, skills that would soon be tested on a much larger stage. Munzuk's death marked a turning point in Attila's life. As he lay on his deathbed, the old chieftain called Attila to his side. In his final moments, Munzuk spoke of the legacy he hoped Attila would fulfill, a legacy of a united Hunnic empire, feared by all and unmatched in power. "You have the strength, the cunning, and the will to lead our people to greatness," Munzuk told his son. "But remember, true power lies not just in the sword, but in the mind that wields it." These words would echo in Attila's mind for the rest of his life, guiding his every action as he rose to power. With the death of his father, and later his brother Bleda, Attila emerged as the undisputed leader of the Huns. He inherited not just a tribe, but a people united by a shared vision, a vision implanted in him by Munzuk. Under Attila's leadership, the Huns became a whirlwind of destruction, sweeping across Europe and Asia, leaving a trail of shattered empires in their wake. With a keen understanding of tactics and strategy, Attila orchestrated campaigns of unprecedented scope and ambition. His armies, driven by an unrelenting will, crushed all who stood. In 451 AD, one of the most significant battles of the ancient world unfolded on the Catalonian plains in Gaul, known today as France. Here, Attila faced a formidable coalition of Roman forces led by General Flavius Aetius and the Visigoths under King Theodoric I. The stakes were high, control over Western Europe hung in the balance. Attila's strategy was bold and typical of his style. He aimed to divide and conquer his enemies. But this time, he faced a united front that refused to break. The battle raged for hours, with neither side able to claim a decisive victory. In the chaos, Theodoric was killed, and the battlefield became a slaughterhouse, soaked in blood and strewn with the fallen. Although the battle ended inconclusively, it marked the first significant check on Attila's expansion in the west. For the Romans and their allies, it was a rare and crucial victory, one that would slow but not stop the Hunnic advance. Attila, undeterred, withdrew, only to return with renewed fury in the following years. Attila's relationship with the Roman Empire was as complex as it was ruthless. He understood that Rome, once the center of the known world, was now a fractured and vulnerable giant. Attila exploited this vulnerability with masterful precision. He played the Eastern and Western Roman empires against each other, extracting vast tributes, while keeping both in a state of perpetual war. In 450 AD, Attila received a surprising offer from Honoria, the sister of the Western Roman Emperor Valentinian III. Desperate to escape an arranged marriage, Honoria sent Attila her ring, proposing a union. Seizing the opportunity, Attila demanded half of the Western Empire as her dowry, a demand that would almost bring Rome to its knees. Though the marriage never occurred, the proposal exemplified Attila's shrewdness in using every opportunity to further his ambitions. He understood the power of fear and the importance of psychological warfare, and he wielded these weapons as effectively as any sword. In 453 AD, Attila prepared for a grand celebration, a marriage to Ildiko, a young bride from a recently subdued tribe. The wedding was to be a symbol of his power and continued dominance, but fate had other plans. On the night of his wedding, Attila the Hun was found dead, lying in a pool of his own blood. The cause of his death remains a mystery to this day. Some say it was a nosebleed brought on by heavy drinking. Others whisper of assassination, perhaps at the hands of his new bride. Whatever the truth, Attila's sudden death sent shockwaves through the Hunnic Empire. Without Attila's unifying presence, the empire he had built began to fracture. His sons, left to squabble over the remnants of his legacy, proved incapable of holding the vast territory together. In just a few short years, the Hunnic Empire disintegrated, swallowed by the very forces it had once terrorized. Attila's death marked the end of an era, but his legend lived on. For centuries, his name would be invoked as a symbol of terror and destruction, but beyond the fear he inspired, Attila left a lasting impact on the course of European history, accelerating the fall of the Western Roman Empire and altering the map of the continent forever. The eyes of Attila, this time fading into the shadows. The battlefield is empty, but the sound of distant hoofbeats echoes. Attila the Hun, a man whose life was as brutal as the land that bore him, whose ambition knew no bounds, and whose legacy would cast a long shadow over the history of Europe. To his enemies, he was the Scourge of God, a force of nature that could not be tamed. To his people, he was a leader who turned a disparate tribe into an empire. In the end, the story of Attila is a reminder that even the mightiest conquerors are mortal, but their impact can shape the world for centuries to come.
Attila the Hun, conqueror of empires,